Okay, we're live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this first June meeting of Mahone Bay Town Council. And welcome to the people who are joining us at home tonight on YouTube. And as always, when the meeting is concluded, there will be an opportunity for folks at home to ask questions about any item that is discussed tonight. We'll call the meeting to order and we'll begin by welcoming Eric Levy to council chamber. Eric is the new deputy CAO here in Mahone Bay, who has recently been appointed. And I'm sure over the next few weeks, Eric will be making his presence known. And the folks in town will come to know him quickly. So Eric, welcome.
Thank you.
You have an agenda before you, and I would note that the closed session is canceled. We will not be having a closed session tonight. So with that adjustment, what is your wish for the agenda? Councillor
I
Carver?
move that the agenda be accepted as circulated.
Circulated or amended?
Amended.
Thank you. Okay, with the seconder? You've heard the motion on the question. All in favor? Don't have to count too high tonight to see what.
Sorry, Mayor, I had my hand up. I just wanted to ask a question.
Oh, that's the deputy mayor. Yes, sir.
With the closed session, I had suggested that we discuss conflict of interest. So are both issues tabled for another day?
That's the only issue on the conflict of interest, or on the in-camera session. But because you are not with us here in the chamber tonight, but connecting by phone, the CAO had suggested that we may choose to postpone it
Okay,
to a time when you can be here in the chamber.
okay, fair enough.
Are you okay with that?
Sure.
I mean, I don't mind going ahead, I was just trying to.
No,
suggest
yeah, I
that-
know.
That's
we'll-
okay. That's okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So on that note, all in favor? Deputy Mayor, I can't. Okay, thank you. I'm looking at that computer down there that he's signed in on, right?
Oh, that didn't work as well?
Yeah, okay. We didn't do our acknowledgement for the council meeting, did we? We did it for the public session, but for the council meeting, again, we will acknowledge that we are gathered tonight in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, present, and future territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Tonight, we gather with the intent followed by the living peace and friendship treaties with respect, cooperation, and coexistence. Let's go to the minutes of recent meetings that require approval. The first one is the special council meeting of May the 18th. If somebody would like to.
Will they accept as secretary?
Okay, and Councillor Carver seconds on the motion. All in favor? The motion is carried. The regular council meeting of May 25th.
Will we approve as circulated?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Now. On the question, all in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. Let's go to the special council meeting of June the 2nd.
Move that the minutes be accepted as circulated.
Thank you, Councillor Carver, seconded by Councillor Now. On the motion, on the question, all in favor? The motion is carried. There we go. Okay, the public input session. This is the time when we normally invite people at home, or if somebody chooses to come into the council chambers to speak on any topic that they may choose to do. Eric, you were saying? No one, Deputy Clerk? Let's wait maybe for a minute or so.
Clerk now.
Pardon me?
I think she's clerk now.
She's
She's
clerk.
not the deputy anymore.
I gotta get a program with
I
all
know.
the players on it, right?
Well, I guess everybody's watching and they're wondering about that. The business plan for the year will come to council next month, because it always comes after the budget. And a lot of that is who's in what position. So we'll have an updated org chart in there. We don't usually have photos. I've tried to convince the staff too, but not everybody's inclined.
Yeah.
Well, the district of Yarmouth at one point did photos. They had people scuba diving and all kinds of stuff with their staff, just weird pictures. That I don't think we could get our staff to agree to that. I don't know.
Okay. We don't have anyone who wishes to speak to council. So let's go to, we don't have any presentations. Let's go right to correspondence. 5.1, the survey concerning policing services in Nova Scotia.
So just, I guess, to briefly comment on this, they are looking for a single unified response. Mayor and I have talked about this, and I think he would be happy to take the lead. I'm also not going to be here because I'm off next week. So I think staff will be at the mayor's disposal for factual information, but in terms of any input that the council may have, the suggestion was, if David, if this still works for you, for people to circulate whatever responses through you to respond to the single response that they're requesting.
Is everyone on the distribution list for NSFM? Because there's a copy of the survey on today's or yesterday's Monday news thing they send out, and I actually opened it and I couldn't see a lot of things that we're going to be able to respond to. If you're in HRM, I think it's going to be possible. They're talking about how much money do you budget, or we budget for whatever they tell us it's going to cost for the police services. It talks about what other monies did you have to spend if you had to get analysis done or research done, and that's all part of our contract. So I don't think it's going to be a particularly onerous task. But if members of council could have a look at that and send me their comments in short order, Councillor Carver.
The letter from the NSFM suggests that that our police advisory board be consulted. And is there time to do that before the deadline?
Well, basically, it would be, here's the survey. It put it in, do you recall the published due date?
20th.
20th, it says here.
Yeah.
So
20th.
if you want members who are not on council to get an email with that, either you can, or if you want staff to
All right,
just to say, hey, if you have any comments, send it to Dave. I guess would be so.
okay,
There's only 2 other members.
that's right. And Mr. Dawson is leaving. July 17th.
Leaving the committee?
He's leaving, moving to HRM.
Oh,
Well, you can get in a final survey response as a
Yeah.
member.
and in particular, some input from Councillor Feeney. Isn't he the chair of the police advisory board?
No, I think the deputy mayor is.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh, he has his hand up, by the way.
Deputy mayor. You're on mute, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
So I've been trying to find this. I believe I am on NSFM communications, whatever list is, but I can't find this communication, and I find that the timeline is very, very quick for something that
Yeah.
needs a very a deep conversation about things. And so I'm not a fan of NSFM in many ways, but this is just one of those things that rubs me the wrong way, and sort of wondering if there's a lot of utility. I haven't seen the link. I wasn't able to click on it.
I will send it to you tonight.
Yeah.
When I send it to the PAB. I really do think, Deputy Mayor, that you will find the survey is not asking the questions that I think we would want to have answers to. It's more about the dollars and cents and the business of policing, not the philosophy or how they actually accomplish certain tasks.
And so exactly my fear around, so NSFM will go and claim they've consulted the membership around policing services with a consultation that doesn't actually speak to the things that we want or need. And I'm wondering whether there will be utility. I can't remember when our next PAB is, whether there's utility to ignore the survey and write a letter to NSFM with what we feel.
We can always put a covering letter.
Yeah.
Well, we don't actually, because the survey gets submitted directly to NSFM, but we can still write to them.
Yeah. So I'll take a look when I get the link and maybe suggest. I think it's, rather than just participate for the sake of participating, it's important to highlight what our issues are in participating in a process that actually rubber stamps something we're not very clear about. Thanks.
Okay, so today is what? 13th. We got 1 week, so. Okay. Yeah, well, like I said, I thought it was the business of policing, not the drivers, the operational drivers of it.
Yeah, I certainly support the idea that having a comprehensive cover letter to go along,
Yeah,
or in addition to the survey.
okay. Let's go to correspondence 5.2, the letter from Brian Hasten and Val Herder on forest fire prevention. Do you all have a chance to have a look at that?
I did. And I'm not sure that it's a council responsibility to start with. According to natural resources and any other source, it's up to the homeowner to make their property safe against wildfires. Which means having any vegetation, any trees, bushes, that type of thing, 30 feet from your home.
Okay. So what about like the fire break thing, like they talked about? And you hear that when they talk about forest fires, the team is in there making a fire break.
Yes, but it's pretty hard for us to put fire breaks in, say the property back, the old school property, woods is. It'd be pretty hard for us to put fire breaks in there without taking a bunch of trees. Then what do you do with the brushing area?
Well, and you have to know where the fire is before you put in the fire break.
That's right. That's what the fire break usually does.
That's why it's done when it's burning.
Yeah, they go in front of the fire, they put on a 30-foot
Okay.
fire break or whatever. It'd be pretty hard for us to even think about putting fire breaks back in any of our lands.
I can't imagine,
You know,
worship,
if it
the
ever-
reaction if we started making 60-foot swaths through
yeah,
all the woods in town.
if the fire ever got into those tall pines at the park, there'd be no stopping.
And when Peter Drinker was here, one of the things that he said was about going in and cleaning out the woods. You know, you don't want trees that have fallen over.
Mm.
Either take them out or let them lay right down on the ground where they're going to start to decompose. But not as much of a fire has. Because I've noticed different spots in the woods around town where there seems to be a lot of brush and
And our woods aren't near as bad as rock woods. With hurricanes hit this, so those trees are still in.
CAO and then Councillor Carter.
Well, most of those things that you guys touch on are referenced in the letter. I was thinking it's such a comprehensive letter, which is not surprising, that we would probably, if council's interested, want to refer the staff to provide a report on. I mean, some of these items are actionable by us, some of them are Remo, some of them probably aren't actionable, but there's an awful lot of stuff in there.
And I think someone needs to talk to DNR as well to get their perspective. They're the the forest management and forest fire specialists, if anyone is, and the fire department.
So not to make more work for us, but if council's inclined to, do anything else with this letter, I would just suggest that maybe a report from staff should be requested.
I'd be
Councillor
happy to make a motion to that effect, that we do refer his letter to staff for a report back on the various issues that were raised, so. Is that a motion? Yes, got that?
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
we're looking for the feasibility of,
Yeah.
I mean, is it, I guess firstly, is it the town's responsibility? And is it feasible that the town would undertake? it? Okay, do we have a seconder for the motion?
I will second and question, just comment.
Okay, Deputy Mayor seconds. You've heard the
Yeah.
motion on the question, Deputy Mayor, please.
Yeah, on the questions, I just wanted to say that I think the opening remarks to this letter, from my perspective, are not very encouraging. But this is, even if it's not a role of council has been notified of this, and I think we need to take it seriously. And so, as we refer this to staff to think about, we need to think about what we can do and what we can mobilize others to do. So in as much as it might not be our responsibility, if there's danger and some of our residents are worried about, we need to take that seriously.
Councillor Carroll?
I don't know if the deputy mayor's comments were to the effect that this motion is not taking the issue seriously. I think it's taking it very seriously, and in the hope that staff has more resources than we do to be able to pull comprehensive response together. So I certainly think
No, so that wasn't my intention. I was just saying that the first comments that were said did not reflect that we were taking it seriously, just listening from a side. So just wanted to point that out, that we are taking it seriously. And I agree the motion takes it
Council
seriously.
table, Deputy Mayor?
Sorry?
The comments here at the council table at the beginning of this.
Yeah, so there was the first few comments, I can't remember who said them, that these are not things that we can do, and they're probably not our responsibility. If I'm a citizen and I write a letter, there are things that I understand council can do and council can do. I'm just highlighting that our response in the get-go wasn't great.
Councillor Carroll.
And in the interest of taking it seriously, I think that it is so complex that we need time to think about it and reflect on it, to identify the things that we can take action on. And one possible action could be to have a public information session. I mean, we've heard a comment from a firefighter one of our councillors to the firefighter, and he's already referenced other experts who might be available. I think people are worried. I mean, the whole fire situation in the past few weeks has really put the issue front of mind for people. So I think that an information session public in the fall might be something we could be looking at after we have more information.
And the outcome of this motion is not going to be to do all those things. It's to look at what's involved, what would the professionals recommend, what are the real issues here, so council can make a further decision in terms of implementation of the strategy.
That would be my understanding.
Okay,
Could I have the motion read, please?
That council directs staff to provide a report on the issues outlined in this letter. I will detail in the motion.
You don't have to detail.
Well, not detail, but who the letter's from.
yeah,
Well, the letter submitted by Barry and
Yeah.
Valerie Herder.
Councilor Wilson.
Well, I'm assuming that staff have a better understanding of what's meant by that motion than I do. Because you have to kind of piece through this to figure out which parts are doable by the town and which parts are not. You have to also remember, I think that it has been suggested in the past that we go into Jubilee Woods, for example, and clean up the underbrush. And there's been a significant pushback from members of council because all of the trash and debris provides homes for the little critters. So there's a lot of push and pull dynamic in this whole thing. There's also a lot of private land, which happens, I think, to be the best maintained property, wooded property in town. And we don't have any jurisdiction there in any case. And I, far from being dismissive, I think Councillor Now's comments about it is property owners' responsibility to make sure that their houses are safe from this kind of thing. And believe me, from where I'm situated, I'm as aware of it as anybody in town.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of different responsibilities here. And I'm not quite sure how the town taking this letter and creating a report is going to. I don't know how we're going to be successful in parsing all of that and coming up with something meaningful in terms of action.
Okay.
I mean, I can just comment on what I
Mr.
assume
Hyde?
you do. I think there's, what, 8 recommendations in there? So I just thought we'd go down and say, is it our jurisdiction? Is it somebody else's? If it is our jurisdiction, what steps might council contemplate? And that would basically be the report.
Okay. Fair enough.
Deputy Mayor?
I understand that and I appreciate it. I think for me, when I look at this, there's also an element of public awareness and creating a platform whereby people constantly know what good management practices are of the woodlands that they have or around them. Maybe it might be something that there might be somebody in the community who might be willing to work with council to create some material that we can share. So our roles can be different, and I'm hoping staff will look at it broadly from it's not just nuts and bolts, but creating a safe community. There are certain things we can do that don't even involve money or resources that we can put some leadership to and try and address. One of the things that I think with what has happened now is that there hasn't been, I haven't seen it being properly addressed, is the issue of people having fires in the woods and how safe it is when bans are there, what it means, and public awareness around that stuff. Not much is being done. We just assume that because we put up fire bans, then everybody can understand and should understand and do that. But I mean, we know that behavior change doesn't work that way. So there are things that we might be able to do.
Okay. Councillor Now?
Yeah, I agree that we should get some more public education out there. As far as the fire ban goes, there are still people burning. I don't think they're charging these people enough. There was one person just recently, day before yesterday, I believe, was burning in a barrel, and she was issued a fine of $28,000.
Down
So-
Shelburne Way.
It's very significant, they fine. But it's the matter of enforcing it. You know, if we get a fire, we're going to certainly go on natural resources and say, hey, look, this person will really be burning. Charge them. Or I don't think we would. anyway.
Would you expect the citizen to appeal the fine as being outrageous? I mean, it's not when you think about it in the context of the damage
No.
the forest fires do, but
But
to,
it's a law, if the government, virtual government has passed it, this is the fine for
yeah,
illegally burning. From ban on.
okay,
So I think, we need to enforce that. And just as an aside, down in Shelburne where the fire still placed, I got a guy I got to know, a firefighter down there in Gunning Cove. He had a bunch of shrubs, cedar plants that he was gonna give away. One of the stipulations he made was, in order to get one, you gotta guarantee me that it'll be planted 30 feet from your home. Because not when we plant 30 feet from your home, not being there. That's a fire prevention thing.
30 feet doesn't seem like much.
It's not if you got a real raging fire, but it's better than having bushes and everything right around your home, right?
Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor. You've heard the motion, we've heard the question, the discussion on the motion. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Motion is carried. It'll go to staff for a report. Okay, 5.3, Eric Claus request for parking buyout. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I guess just to say that this is a request that is permissible under our land use bylaws. So we have accepted these proposals in the past, but the consideration is meant to be on the availability of public parking in the area. So and just the general necessity for the parking.
Okay,
So it is council's discretion here. I guess you know, not to put anyone on the spot, our planner is here, but at the same time, they haven't been requested to provide a report on this tonight, so we could also take that step and that would delay council a little bit if there are questions that you have for the development officer.
Councillor Wilson.
One question just for staff, and as I understand it, this is in what is proposed to be it's not commercial shoreline, but it's the new commercial zoning that will not require any parking amendments for changes of use, correct?
It's proposed in the draft plan.
Yeah,
I think it
my
is.
question is, did these folks that are asking for this, are they aware that this may all change in a matter of a couple of months?
Yeah, I don't know that. I mean, Heather certainly is aware. I think she would tell them it's not any guarantee that it's happening, you know, in a couple of months, right? Because that'll be up to the steering team. So she may have advised them that it is considered now as a possibility in the process, but if they want something sooner than later, they probably want to get into something this summer.
Okay,
But it does have to provide a good context for us in considering if we're likely to then flip the requirements they wouldn't have even had to make this.
I guess go a little bit further for me, Your Worship. I wonder what council's appetite would be for approving this request with the proviso that if the rules change in, let's say, before the end of the calendar year, that they get the money back.
Councillor Carver.
I'm hesitant to approve the request because I really would like to have more information from the development officer about what issues were considered or went into, what issues go into the decision. I would like to have more information from the development officer rather than approving it right off the top tonight.
So I think, you know, I'd suggest a motion if that is the request.
Deputy Mayor has a question.
So if I understand things right, this is something that with the new land use bylaw and municipal planning strategy, this is something that they'd be able to do as of right without having to have a buyout.
Correct.
Yes,
The
yeah,
need for the
they're-
two
they're in the
spaces
area that's
disappeared.
proposed to not require parking for commercial activities. It's, again, to say it's in the proposed draft documents.
So from that perspective, council and the steering team for the Plan Mohombi process is actually they've given approval to this kind of development taking place. And so I don't see why we as council would be trying to deny this opportunity from taking place if we are saying the plan we put out there is what we want for the town. So I mean, Councillor Wilson's proposals make sense. I think that what ties us down right now is because the current land use bylaw and MPS probably doesn't allow for us to just say we are granting you without the buyout. My assumption is that, and so I would be okay with the idea of saying yes, knowing very well that hopefully when we approve the draft documents, that is something that is in there already. It's not something that is new or not within our plans for the town going forward.
Okay. Councillor Now,
Yeah, I agree with allowing it to happen, but I think when they are given that designation to go ahead with the buyout, that they are advised that down the road, when the new plan takes place, that this will be a matter of right, and then it'll be up to them whether they want to proceed now or wait until the new land use bylaws in place.
Councillor Carver.
I have a question in relation to Councillor Wilson's suggestion. Does the town have the authority to return money that's already been with?
Yeah, I was just flipping to the section of the current land use bylaw to see how it was worded, because I don't think we've ever had this question.
The current one, not the proposed one.
Yeah, so council may accept cash in lieu of providing for required parking, minimum 2 spaces there, so. I mean, it doesn't say anything about it, we can double check with our lawyer afterwards, but I guess if a motion were made to that effect, and as long as it didn't turn out that it contravened the MGA, we could go ahead, and if it did contravene the MGA, the worst case scenario is we'd have to do a new motion without that.
Okay, somebody like to make the motion?
What motion is being, oh,
Councillor
I
Wilson.
move that council approve the request for a buyout of parking as per the item on our agenda, with the proviso that if the rules of the game change by the end of the calendar year,
Through the Plan Mahone Bay.
through the Plan Mahone Bay process, the money will be returned.
Okay,
$1,131.44.
do we have a seconder? Is he? I haven't got him on my screen. Beep. Okay, Deputy Mayor, you seconded? Glad to hear it. Okay. You've heard the motion. On the question.
So I'm understanding the motion correctly. You're putting a timeline on for the end of the calendar year. If it doesn't happen before that, then we keep everything, we keep going.
Okay. All right. On the question. All in favor?
opposed?
One's opposed, so 4 in favor and 1 opposed. Thank you. Number 5.4, Mark Peck. Our friend in the provincial government, to be sure. We've had a lot of business with Mark. He now is on the new Special Commission on Transportation. And they're asking for a working group member.
And I'll just clarify that it does specifically request the staff person, and we had double checked that is they're looking for staff appointments. It's a little odd for council to have to appoint a staff person, but I guess they're looking to see that we have your confidence in this respect. So I would put myself forward and Eric as an alternate if that is agreeable to council.
Okay, so will you and or Eric represent the views of council?
I mean, I really don't know what to expect. Like, we're not going to represent anything the council hasn't set some type of, direction on, right? So we can go, we can provide factual input, we can bring stuff back, and if council then provides us with direction, we can take it. The fact they're asking for staff, I'm assuming they're looking more at logistical things, but I really don't know what to expect with this process. It's new, it's a new organization. I thought it was interesting that Mahone Bay just barely fell within the radius of light
Yeah,
around Halifax,
right on
which
the
might be
edge.
how Haligonians kind of think of things anyway with that.
There's a bus once a week to go to Mahone Bay from Halifax.
If I could, I attended the first meeting in Halifax before I sent out this letter. And so my understanding is it's essentially the commitment is from now until I think November 2024 is when they have a deadline to produce a plan to outline transportation options for that
Yeah.
region. And so this, excuse me, this group would be the staff, municipal staff working group, and then they also have a technical working group who are also doing their own work simultaneous to what the CAO would be involved with. So I don't know much more than that, but just to kind of frame the commitment, I guess it's a little more than a year, and because that's when their deadline is to have a draft produced for their plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was registered for that one, but I was triple booked, so I
Yeah.
didn't make it.
Okay, so we have a volunteer to go to that group.
It's my blessing.
Okay, do we need a motion?
I guess so. I mean, they've asked the council to do this,
Okay.
so I guess just to.
Entertain a motion to nominate the CAO as our representative to this group with the deputy CAO as the alternate.
So moved.
Seconded by Councillor Carter. On the question. All in favor? Motion's carried.
And Kelly, you'll get that back to Mark this week. They're just looking for a quick
Okay.
turnaround.
Let's go to staff reports to council for June 13th.
As always, the first one is the report to council.
Yeah,
And this is the short one. It's actually only 8 pages. That may be the shortest it's been. If that represents how much we've gotten done catching up on some of the tasks to sign, but there's still 8 pages of them. So if anybody has any questions about those, don't hesitate to ask.
Councillor Wilson.
There are, of course, a number of the items that are on here that are sort of been here for quite a while. And without going through each one of them, one of the ones that's always kind of bothered me is this Blue Route program, and in particular, running a bike path through the liquor board parking lot, which seems to me on the surface to be fraught with hazard to start with. But that being said, we've gotten absolutely nowhere with the liquor commission up to this moment in time. Breaking news.
Well, it's not,
Yeah.
so we have had meetings with them on and off, but most recently, we actually had a meeting with their property management director on site just about a week and a half ago. So there is a serious interest, and essentially we're down to one logical pathway, right? So if you took an absolutely straight shot along the margin of their property, along where the fence is now, you would have a nice clear trail, you know, very, very clean, no interference with anything, except that it would cut into the existing parking lot. So what they have to contemplate is rearranging their parking to add additional spaces in the front of the building. So that would basically be the trade-off. And right now we're at the stage of figuring out what that would potentially require and also what that might cost, so that they can decide on their end if they're willing and if there's any appetite to contribute to those costs. So, you know, in terms of a design, I think it's a real solid design. It just, you know, it will not be a minor undertaking. The Liquor Commission has indicated that they see this as something that they try to do when they own properties. So they rent a lot of their properties, so they're not always able to do this sort of thing, but that they would be, and, you know, the provincial Department of Energy would, as they have done in the past, quite likely contribute funds to this through the Connect 2 program. So, you know, it's really just down to how important is it that we not have it on our list anymore, I guess, because I absolutely acknowledge it's been on there now since the year I arrived. I believe Derek was our representative on that. So that just tells you how long ago that Blue Route project was. But yes, it's not for lack of any interest on the part of Liquor Commission. So it may still come to naught, but I guess I would suggest council let it stick around a little longer until we have a conclusion one way or another, unless there's actually a opposition to it, obviously. But if it's just a matter of it having been all there a long time, I agree it's a little embarrassing, but that way we never forget and we're always held to account about these things.
Okay.
And the rationale for it still seems pretty solid because there is no good connection through from Kinburn, you know, now, and we do already have people cutting through the parking lot, which they would like to minimize.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Getting out easy at night, see,
Well, we could all get it. We'll get out easy tonight. That'll be good.
okay, well, Chair would entertain a motion to receive the report for information. Councillor Carver, Councillor now seconds. All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to the bandstand grant application.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this one's also been on the list for a long time, and in order to move it along, we realized we actually need a motion of council. So even though we just talked about this in the budget process, and everybody should be pretty aware of it, Kelly put a report here together just to summarize what we're looking for, and it's just a requirement of the process that a signing authority be approved in this manner. So it's also, I think it's fine if you want the mayor to do it. In fact, like depending on the timing, I guess Kelly, if it's, you know, ready to go, it would be just as good to have David do it, but
Yep.
That might be helpful because if everything's not quite assembled tomorrow,
Yeah,
then.
exactly.
Yeah.
so, and then, you know, so, but we just need a council to
Somebody
direct someone.
make a motion to that effect? Councillor now moves.
If you're good with that, because I'm gonna be gone, so it just might
Yeah,
be
okay.
easier, yeah.
Councillor Carver, you second me?
Sure.
There you go.
But I have a question.
Okay,
No, and it's about, I really am impressed by the input that has been sought and obtained from people who rent the bandstand properties. But I'm wondering if there was any attempt to learn from the public what they might like to see at the bandstand. Any changes at all?
I think we had a publicly open.
There were two separate surveys. There was one
Were there?
for users, like renters of the facility, and then there was one for people who attend.
I suspect the sunshade over the bleachers would be one thing that people,
And I know in the past, we've received letters of support for this. One of the organizations that provided it was the nursing home. Because people do come out to these
Mhm.
shows. It's a nice opportunity for people. And yeah, their comment, I know they had the shade would be helpful. That gets hot on the bleachers.
Thank you for the information.
okay. So we have a motion on the floor, on the table. All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to the Blue Flag Marina designation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this originally come up from the Climate and Environment Committee, recommending the council direct staff to reach out to the Wooden Boat Society about this. And I don't think it's the first time it had been explored. I had a good conversation with the Wooden Boat Society members, and it is something that they've looked at in the past. Overall, they have a significant interest in the water quality subject. It's something that affects the experience of their users there, obviously, if people would like to see cleaner water in the harbor. So there is a general agreement that they would support any effort in that regard, but I think it's very clear that that is only the tip of the iceberg with respect to what the blue flag designation would require. So I guess at a minimum, if we could tackle harbor water to the extent that everyone feels comfortable to do so, and with the Boat Society as a possible supporter, well, that would be necessary to even attempt the designation. So and there's some other parts of designation that seem even more challenging to achieve. So I think when it comes to harbor water quality, the question really becomes who would have to get into that. And like I said, it has been explored before. We took an effort just before I came on with town, that I was briefed on by the mayor when I came on about regulating and actually having a direct responsibility, or somebody taking on a direct responsibility to regulate and enforce. And that's a really challenging subject because we've got a shared harbor with a lot of different sources of pollution. We've got a mooring field controlled by the marina. We've also got moorings not controlled by the marina. So I think, ultimately, if it's just the testing and education and awareness effort, what it becomes more is who can do testing. And I guess I would suggest that we probably need to talk to Coastal Action. That's where they originated, to my knowledge, was doing water testing in the harbor and similar locations. So The recommendation here is to refer this back to the Climate and Environment Committee for further consideration, noting that the Woodbow Society's willingness to cooperate with respect to the harbor water quality. If in fact that becomes an initiative and we want them to do testing at the wharf, they'll do that. And they're happy to also disseminate information to boaters about best practices and all that kind of stuff. But they suggested that having a baseline and doing some kind of testing would probably help as far as having that conversation with users. And I would agree. So it's complicated enough that either council says, thanks, that's it, or refers it back to the committee would be our recommendation. The chair of the committee looks a little concerned. So if you prefer to just say, thanks, that's good enough for now, then that's also okay.
Well, as chair of the committee, and we have the vice chair in the room too, I'm sort of overwhelmed by the scale of it all. It is an unwieldiness of it all. But think at the very least, if we have a discussion with the Wooden Boat Society at the Climate and Environment Committee, we might be able to identify some action items or recommendations back to council. Does that make any sense to sort of think of it that way?
I mean, I think you would want coastal action to be a part of that conversation.
And coastal action.
So maybe the committee talk about it, and then if the committee feels to say, invite the Wooden Boat Society and coastal action, and then and after that, if there's a recommendation back to council. Yeah, so I think that would be reasonable. Again, the committee originated this, but I think it was
Yeah.
kind of a side comment as opposed to something they'd really consider how much effort would be entailed.
Well, I, with all that in mind, I would move that council refer the issue of harbor water quality monitoring back to the Climate and Environment Committee for further consideration, noting the Wooden Boat Society's willingness to cooperate in this regard.
One comment, if I could, you mentioned specifically water quality monitoring.
Should we second this?
Oh, okay.
Second.
Second, thank you, Councillor Wilson. It's much bigger than just, I mean, you can get the Bay Calf people come in and they'll say, yeah, the water's terrible. Which it has been for a long time for a lot of reasons, but it's really beyond the scope of that is the blue flag designation. There's so much involved. So I'm just wondering if maybe we shouldn't be that specific in engaging the environment and the Climate and Environment Committee, the marina people, and they're not called
Coastal
Bay Calf
action.
anymore.
Coastal action.
Coastal action, to look at that whole issue. To
Yeah.
see if there's a way ahead, and as a result, we may be able to achieve the blue flag designation.
Well, I think that's what happened at this discussion at the Climate and Environment Committee.
Okay, if you're comfortable with the motion, then
Yeah.
we'll. It's moved and it's seconded. Any other comments, Deputy Mayor?
Blue flag designation in 2050.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Yeah,
And we have Councillor Wilson's expertise from his many years involved with coastal action and on the Harbor Development Committee.
And it'll still be around in 2050, so.
Yeah.
there you go. Okay, on the motion, all in favor? Motion's carried. Housing strategy update.
So this isn't a super positive report. I felt I had to provide it because we've been patiently waiting for needs assessment from the province. They now indicated any number of times that it was just around the corner. When I did a report last October, we did feel that we would by now have received it. But now we're into a situation where we're crossing over with federal funding availability and essentially risking, likely making a strategy that would not have any possibility of being implemented or supported by external funding if we miss this window. So it's what I'm speaking of course, here is the Housing Accelerator Fund. It's being constantly pushed and reinforced as a significant instrument of federal funding. And so it's not that I look forward to requesting that staff be directed to do this because it's going to be quite challenging. But I think that on balance, we would be better served to attempt to develop an action plan and apply for funding under this fund than wait on the possibility of developing a strategy. I don't believe that it rules out the possible development of a strategy, but I did contemplate in this report that council may want to consider the challenges in this sort of two-pronged approach if we develop an action plan over the next, say, 6 weeks, but also try to develop a strategy over the following year, which is a much more appropriate time frame, I grant you. You know, but I would be, I feel remiss if I didn't bring this to council's attention now while there remains even the possibility of qualifying for funding. So a number of Nova Scotia municipalities have come down in different ways, attempting to develop enough to apply. It's certainly being encouraged. But you know, it's incredibly disappointing that the province says somehow reassuringly, well, don't worry, the needs assessment will be available before the deadline, knowing that that would leave absolutely no time to develop an action plan on the basis of said needs assessment. So we're just in a rough position. If council is inclined to let this opportunity go by, obviously that is another option. But I think many of the actions that would arise from the strategy would point back to CMHC as a possible source of support. So that would be the tragedy in waiting, I guess. So happy to take any questions on this.
Sorry, go ahead, Council.
What probably the same question, the deadline for applying.
It hasn't been announced. What they've said is that the window will be this summer and it'll seemingly be 45 days. So what we're expecting is that by July, they'll announce it and it will fall sometime in August. That seems most likely. And probably the needs assessment will be released in July. Yeah.
No.
And of course, if we get the needs assessment tomorrow, we'll, you know, if this motion were to go through and we got the needs assessment tomorrow, we'd be positioned then to actually use that in the development of an action plan. But if it doesn't come in, we wouldn't be.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, so and I think, thank you, CEO, for bringing it to the table. I think it makes sense to do something to be prepared. I'm a little bit worried about a public engagement process that is rushed, and then the utility of it and spending money to just do it to get things quickly done, and sort of wondering whether there could be other approaches to that. And maybe there might be a window to work with SHAC, Social Housing Action Coalition, to draft up or get us, I guess people around here call it a straw dog of an action plan that can be what you put out there to the community for response and input, rather than the other way, which is what I would advocate for. But in terms of time, if at least you're providing something that the public can respond to that's very structured, you can do that in a narrower period. But in many ways, from my perspective, I think it's good to put something together, just not sure about the public engagement process, and wanting to maybe encourage us to ensure that we include SHAC in the conversation in how this is put together.
CAO?
So I mean, all good points, and there's many different ways you could do it. In terms of involving SHAC, I have already discussed here with Eric about reaching out, getting caught up on SHAC, and obviously I'm hoping that if this motion were to pass, that we're not going to wait 2 weeks for me, so that he'll get started on those conversations. But it's a good point. You know, is there a preliminary contact with the public around housing, or has there been sufficient contact? There was a survey that SHAC commissioned a number of years ago, and there have been other forms of input in order to go as far as generating a draft document and then engaging with the public. And given the time frame, you know, we contemplated the possibility of a quick survey up front just to capture general issues people might put in, and then having a session, if we're going to have one late in July, where an action plan draft could potentially be looked at by the public, which suggests that we'd have brought it to council by then, which I do still struggle with, but it's, you know, a terrible time to have a public consultation, but it's the only time we've got. So yeah, any of that kind of input is certainly welcome. We'll do whatever council thinks is reasonable as far as that goes.
Well, I think the idea of consulting with SHAC is excellent. And there was some input also from renters. For example, in the plan review process. I don't know if any of that,
Yes, I'm hoping Upland can just, provide
Yeah.
a good starting place from,
Yeah.
yeah.
but I just want to raise a question about without having an opportunity for a great deal of discussion. How can we work in the idea of non-market housing? I mean, we've always been faced with the idea of a private developer who says they're going to include affordable housing in their development. And I think we all know by now that affordable housing, so-called in a private development, is A, not very affordable, and B, won't stay affordable. So I'm wondering how, if and how we could work something into a draft plan about non-market housing. I'm just throwing that out there for consideration.
Do we have any? Do you have any indicators at all? What the province is going to observe on in terms of needs and needs analysis? I mean, if we go out pursuing something that's totally opposed to what the province is suggesting needs to have happen, where is that going to lead us when it comes time to apply for the extra money? And in fact, are we developing a plan that we're then going to turn to the private sector and say, here's our plan, here's what we need, please come in and tell us how you're going to make that happen? Oh, and bring the money too.
So as far as the question of, where is our, how do I want to say this? So we're, essentially we're going to assume that the province's needs assessment is based on the same statistical information that everyone has access to from the surveys, the federal government censuses that are conducted, the household survey. So that really is, we all have that. In the section on housing in the background report to Plan Mahone Bay, that is presented. I know Jack has presented previous reports using the same 2016 census data. Now the needs assessment will use the more updated 2021 data, I think. So it's a matter of, just kind of revisiting that and saying, because we also used in the Plan Mahone Bay, we used 2016 too, because of course we started that process several years ago as well. But revisiting that and saying, okay, so if this is the basis of it, then we can draw the same conclusions that they're likely to draw. I think the problem we get into, and you and I have talked about this, is, some of the conclusions that are extrapolated from that census data, untested within the community, are likely not that valid or important. I mean, we talk about income and they statistically derive income, but, Mahone Bay's residents have a complicated mix of different sources of income. So we know our low income uptake on our grants for low income residents is nowhere near what the census would indicate it ought to be. And maybe that's because people aren't applying, but it may also be because those people have other sources of income and the census is, overrepresenting the portion of our population that is in that situation. So, we don't really know. That's where you'd hope that they wouldn't just take the census data and that maybe the provincial needs assessment will have some value add. And that's where I can't really speculate on what they've done. I hope they don't just present us with the census data. But that's where a little bit of, asking the community doesn't hurt off the top. And Jack has done that before, of course. So I hope that touched on your questions. It's a complicated subject. And Councillor Wilson wants to say something.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to ask this question, but I'm trying to puzzle out in my mind when we talk about needs assessment as a Mahone Bay Council. Are we talking about working out strategies and solutions for housing problems that exist in Mahone Bay, which we know we have substandard housing, we have needs for modest income people who want to move to town, we have this and that, or are we trying to look at Mahone Bay solving housing problems on a more regional level? So in other words, are we taking the burden of MODL and Bridgewater and et cetera, on our shoulders as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are
Good question.
good questions. I think there's even a third one, which is kind of, how would the town council leverage housing to the ends that the town corporation that like you want? Ultimately, our housing strategy, the council envisioned during the planning strategy process was presumably going to also say it would be good for the town if we had more utility customers. It would be, a positive thing to see certain kinds of housing development for the fabric of the community. We've had lots of conversations around this table about those things. So, there's probably three dimensions of whose strategy is it anyway? Is it the province's strategy for us? Is it our strategy? Is it the people of the community and what they need who live here today? Yeah. So I don't know exactly what the province is going to produce as far as that goes.
Anyone else?
So I think the
So
nature
what
of
do
this
you
is
need?
if this motion goes ahead.
I'll jump in. You probably don't see my hands.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
No worries. So in terms of thinking about whose problem are we solving, somebody in MODL and somebody in the town of Mahone Bay, it's the residents of this province. And so that particular issue around housing, the way I envision this is, as a town, and the CEO has mentioned around utilities and infrastructure, we have infrastructure that can allow a denser population than most of the other places in town. If we think about conservation and all those kinds of things, the ability for us to have more density ensures that we're not clearing forests everywhere. And so there's the balance to be maintained whereby maybe we can figure out in our action plan which areas of our town are we able to accommodate more and which areas don't we want to. And then that goes alongside, I think it's a very timely place because we're doing the Plan Mahone Bay process, that we can marry the two, whereby the Plan Mahone Bay process can also inform what our action plan looks like, and we can be able to guide, if it's development, where do we want to see the development. So having an action plan right now actually helps everybody else know, well, this is the direction the town is going. So I think in terms of processes, it's timely that we can do that. And as councillors, maybe our job is to translate the idea that folks need places to live. We have the infrastructure to ensure that we can have more density than, say, maybe somewhere else we'll have to dig wells and do what's required to provide a septic system. Where can we do that within town that people will be comfortable? We're not changing the image of what Mahone Bay looks like. And this should be able to provide that opportunity for folks to see what the plan is in a much more detailed way than is captured in the Plan Mahone Bay process.
And I think it's a good point, Deputy Mayor, as well, that, a lot of the actions that are imagined are actions we're entirely in the process of doing through Plan Mahone Bay. So, at least we get a jump start on the land use part of it by being able to describe all those land use actions as in progress, and then looking at the other spectrum of actions, more direct and incentive actions.
Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to make the motion that council direct staff to develop and draft housing action plan to support application to the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund for council's consideration.
Seconded by Councillor Carver. On the question. All in favor? Deputy Mayor.
We're gonna work cut out for us.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
And have it done by Friday.
Yeah, basically.
When I said you came here looking for work, didn't you?
Yeah, it seems like it tonight.
Okay. And now let's go to the report of the clerk on the proposed amendment of the development agreement at 995 Main Street.
Yeah, so council received the full report of the clerk concerning amending the development agreement for 995 Main Street during the public hearing that was held this evening at 6:30. At that time, there were no written submissions received.
Okay, that's it?
That's it.
All right.
So just a reminder at this time, then second reading would be in order, having completed the hearing process. If council members feel that you've heard everything you need to hear, somebody
Wants to make
be
it.
in a position to make that motion. Second reading to the amendment of the
I'd
development
happily
agreement.
move that motion if I knew exactly what it was.
To grant second reading to the amending development agreement
For
995 Main Street.
995.
Very much so.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Now. On the motion, on the question. Councillor Carver, you look quizzical.
Thinking.
Are you?
Mhm.
Okay,
And just a reminder, it's only the people in the room who can vote on it.
that's right. That's right. All in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. So now we'll move that. The others take along. All right. Council items. Item number 7, 2023, 2024 budget. It has been quite a feat. I'm not sure how many hours we spent in meetings altogether. I know they started back in March, early April.
It ended up being the first week of April in the end.
Yeah, yeah. And it's been quite a job. I think it was a very worthwhile effort. And I think we've come up with a budget that will help move the town along over the next 12 months. And basically our tax rates will stay the same for the 2023, 2024 budget. Now, there are a number of budget approval motions and that have been provided by our finance manager and her staff. So I would suggest that we, Councillor Kerr,
Just what, I'm trying to find them. I know, so we received.
they're on a separate note that came from her.
But are they under her Ashley's name or
They
did
came
they?
from Dylan.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, on Friday.
To research on budget approval, I think,
Yeah.
budget approval motion.
Is it the budget press release? Is it in that?
No, it's just before
Yeah,
that,
it was in the first email on that.
Yeah. couple of emails before.
I can forward it again. If you need.
It's not.
Flip it out to you guys again.
Hmm,
Oh, I'll just send it. around
Okay.
here. Should be coming now. No, I didn't put a subject or anything, but if you see an email from me now, that would be. Just in this moment, I should note, Mr. Mayor, because I just don't want anybody to say that we didn't say so, that the fire rate actually is increasing. So while there's no change in general and commercial, everybody
And the
will.
tax
pay a
rates,
bit more for
yeah.
fire, Yeah.
because that would have been part of our tax rate at one time, but we've broken it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so it applies to all residential and commercial
Yep.
properties now.
Have you sent the questions? The
Yeah.
Did you find them?
No, not yet.
The message is
It's
there.
very first. Back that out of my search.
Can I start the motions as you look for that?
Sure, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
So I'd like to move the council approve the 2023-2024 general operating budget with the operating expenditure in the amount of $3,212,608 as presented, with the general tax rate set at $115 for every 100 for residential and $3,005 for every $100 for commercial, and the infrastructure charge at $300 per unit.
Councillor Wilson. Second it, okay. You heard the motion, moved and seconded on the question. All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to the second motion. Councillor Wilson, if you would.
Council approved the 2023-24 general capital budget with expenditures totaling $5,161,431, supported by a projected $2,639,914 in external funding.
Okay. Councillor Carver seconds it. On the motion, on the question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Let's go to the next motion.
I'll go in.
Councillor, okay?
I move that council approves the 2023-24 fire department operated budget with expenditures in the amount of $707,216 as presented, and fire tax rates set at 2.209 cents on $100. Right?
I know it's unnerving because we have 3 digits of cents, yeah,
20.9 cents.
20.9.
yeah.
Okay,
No, 7 times.
Councillor now seconds. You heard the motion on the question. All in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to the next one, please. Councillor now.
I'll move that council approve the 2023-24 fire department capital budget with expenditures totaling $418,000.
Second.
Second from Councillor Wilson. On the motion. On question, all in favor? Motion is carried. Deputy Mayor, are you again?
Yeah, I'd like to move that council approve the 2023-2024 electric utility operating budget with operating expenditures in the amount of $2,858,328 as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Carver? You've heard that motion on the electrical utility. All in favor? Motion's carried. Councillor Wilson?
Where are we now?
Electric capital.
Happily, move the council approve the 2023-24 electric utility capital budget with expenditures totaling $649,000.
Seconded by Councillor Carver. On the motion, on the question, all in favor? Motion's carried.
Tonight is the water utility now.
Yep.
Move that council approve the 2023-24 water utility operating budget with the operating expenditures in the amount of $798,631 as presented.
Seconded by Councillor Now. On the motion question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, electric, water, water, okay,
I'll move that council approve the 2023-24 water utility capital budget with expenditures totaling $359,900, supported by a projected $163,082 in external funding.
okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wilson. On the motion, on the question, all in favor? That motion is carried. Councillor Feeney's not here. Deputy Mayor, you want to take the next one?
Sure. I'd like to move the council approve the 2023-2024 cemetery budgets in the amount of $19,000 for the Park Cemetery and $12,500 for the Bayview Cemetery as presented.
Thank you. We have a seconder? Councillor Wilson seconds. You've heard the motion on the question. All in favor? The motion is carried. And the last one, I think, is the budget press release.
So I'll move that council approve the 2023-24 budget press release as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wilson. You've heard the motion on the question. All in favor? Motion's carried.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, everyone. I know it has been a long process, but
It has been a long road
I'm sure
indeed.
Finance will be very happy to hear this, and I think, a good way to equate this very lengthy process of approval is to something like the end of the Lord of the Rings. after so many months of meeting, it makes sense that it took this long to pass the budget, so thanks for bearing through all that.
And it's also worthy of note that while some of our counselors are very astutely aware and highly educated on the nuances of finance, some of us come out with just a blur of things going on in their head at the end of all these budget discussions.
And if you're a member of the public and you're looking for something to do, maybe you're homesick for something like 24 hours of watching, it's all on YouTube.
There you go. That's right. And is the budget posted to the town's website now?
No, it will be tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
So the press release gets issued and it also gets inserted into the front of the document. And
Okay.
those utility intro sections will get inserted in the morning as well.
Okay, very good. Councillor Carter.
Yes, so I would just like to present a motion about the signage at exit 10. Certainly during my time on council, this issue of concern about the appearance at the exit 10 at the junction with Highway 3. Highway 325, Highway 325.
325, yeah.
That's actually Highway 3.
Highway 3, right, thank you. It is unsightly and much of it is outdated and some of it may be illegal. And the jurisdiction about who has authority to make decisions about signage is a little bit ambiguous. The signs are in modal. There is concern from our Mahone Bay Tourism Chamber of Commerce, which has members in modal, but it also is a provincial responsibility, which I don't entirely understand or how it works. But the town itself, I think, has a vested interest in the beauty around us, and we should take whatever steps possible to eliminate any blight on a positive impression of the town. And the chamber has asked us, when we met with them, whether we could support their concern or their interests in having some changes made there. And in the absence of Suzanne or Councillor Lois Croft tonight, who is the liaison with the chamber, she's asked me to bring this to council. And so I would like to make a motion in the belief that if Town of Mahone Bay Council lets the modal council know, if make them aware that we're concerned and we would like them to take the issue seriously, that perhaps the issue might get bumped forward with the province and mobile, so that we can try and resolve some of those concerns. So my motion is that council directs staff and mayor to write to the council of the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, requesting support for the Mahone Bay Tourism Chamber of Commerce efforts to eliminate the unsightly signage display at the exit 10 junction with Route 3.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor now seconds the motion. On the question. Deputy Mayor?
So I'd like to support the motion, but I'm curious about the effect the letter will have. But my sense is that another council does not want to receive direction from another council around here. and whether this letter will be deemed to be direction or instructions, and so I would support it if council thought there is a great utility in doing it. But the sense I get, maybe I'm wrong on this, I will defer to folks who've been here longer than I've been, that it might have the opposite effect of what you might desire to see. Maybe I'm wrong.
Councillor now.
Could we CC that to the Minister of Transportation and Renewables?
Yeah, I think maybe if I could, maybe would be good to the deputy mayor's point and to your suggestion, we could take a tactic of saying, you know, we support what's happening, which means writing to the minister and saying, if MODL were to do anything, the town would be very supportive. You know, I think I agree with the deputy mayor that we're, you know, we know that the province has said MODL needs to adopt a bylaw before they'll remove the signs. So it is a little tricky for us to say anything to the province directly, right? We know that, but and to express that we would support MODL and then copy the minister so the minister knows that we're supporting MODL, I guess. But yeah, there's still the question of whether MODL would feel very supported, because I think their challenge is they've got a lot of exits and probably other, you know, areas would appreciate the same attention. But maybe they wouldn't all, so they have some things to think about. I was encouraging the chamber to reach out to the local member of MODL's council, who is, you know, directly responsible for that area, but yeah, so I think, you know, maybe as long as we're sure the letter is positioned such that copying the minister shows our support for MODL, maybe that's the way to do it.
But we're not support, MODL has not said they're gonna do
No,
it.
but we support it if they do.
Councillor Carter.
Two things. One is that I understand that there has been a pilot project already in the district of Chester. I don't have any more information about that, but can we find out more about it? The pilot project, which I understand has taken place in Chester.
For signage management, really?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure, Kim, my understanding is Chester has put the same mechanisms in place locally that MODL hasn't. And so that the test is just, can we actually regulate it? But there may be more nuance to how they've done that.
so it wasn't necessarily a pilot project in the sense of establishing that something can be done, and other people can.
Well, because in that sense, the use of a bylaw in this manner is widespread across the rest of the province. It may not be the norm in Lunenburg County, but it's certainly the norm in Shelburne County. I think it's the norm up on the it's up by Stewiacke up that way. I think there's a lot of places that this is a normal, yeah.
So the motion suggests that our council write to their council, and I take seriously the deputy mayor's comments of concern about that. And if there's a better way of wording this and directing the letter to the Department of Transportation with a copy to the municipality of the district of Lunenburg, does that make more sense?
I think it would just make them that much more incensed as a deputy mayor. It's like, you know, I'm gonna go talk to the big guy over here. Councillor now.
Even more so than with the letter, the tourism and the people, the retail people want this changed. Would it make sense? I don't know whose signs are out there all, but to maybe approach the people that have the signs there. And the chamber had at one point suggested doing a collage of signs just in one spot, like on one sign. And would it make sense maybe to approach those businesses and see if they'd be amicable to that?
I'm just trying, I can see this wall, PEI does that, of names of businesses, and then other people will put their signs up where the old signs used to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the bylaw is the most.
That's the key
approach.
to.
And then, as Richard said, like the chamber should probably approach these various businesses within that and say, okay, so how can we conform to the bylaw?
Why don't we send a letter of support for the chamber's position to MODL?
Yeah, I mean, because presumably MODL has received a request from our chamber, and at least once they've been talking about it for a long time.
Yeah.
So maybe that's you know, because we were requested to express that support. I think that's what we were requested to do.
So in that case, I could revise the wording to say, to write to the modal council indicating our support for the chamber's efforts to eliminate Does that work better?
I think it would be less likely
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get
absolutely.
them
Absolutely, yeah.
feel like we're trying to tell them how to do their business.
It won't make it look like we're trying to go over their heads or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So the motion then would be write to the council of the municipality of the district of Lunenburg, indicating our support for the chamber's efforts to eliminate the unsightly signage display at the exit 10 junction with Route 3.
Okay. Seconder, are you in agreement with that? Okay. You've heard the revised motion. On the question, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you for the workshop.
There's still another question, he said his hand up.
Who?
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I mean, the motion is already passed and I'm okay with supporting it. I was wondering whether a much more tangible thing to do would be to propose that there is a working group struck between the town of Mahone Bay, the chamber and MODL to find a solution. Because if they receive a letter and file the way we do, it will be filed for information purposes, but no action will happen. So, but it doesn't have to happen tonight. That would be, if I was thinking of action and something that can be tangibly done, a quick action, a working group might be helpful to move some of the needles forward. Who needs to do what, and come up with a work plan that sort of shows the Department of Transportation needs to do X, Model needs to do its bylaw, and Town of Mahone Bay needs to do Y, and the chamber needs to do Y to engage the citizenry. That might be, I guess, a more action-oriented approach to it.
I'm not even sure how much role Mahone Bay would
I think
have.
if you did that, ours would, there'd be no role for us in that
No.
process. Yeah.
It's between the chamber, who've got the concern, and there's members of the chamber that are in MODL.
Well,
And
and I mean,
MODL.
like, part of the challenge we have to presume is that the representative in MODL has heard from the chamber, but those signs also belong to people, and they may be saying something different.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's her thing to deal with. That's not it's not our jurisdiction. So if she's not championing this forward, there may be a perfectly good reason behind the scenes. So yeah, I'd suggest we don't really want to become a part of that conversation.
It'd be interesting to see whether those signs had actually gotten approval from DOT or whoever to put them there.
I think that's part of the confusion, is that, like, because they've been referred to as illegal signs, transportation doesn't require permits for that. So none of them have received a permit, to my knowledge, but they don't require it. No. And that's where they say it's actually the local jurisdiction, right? Because if they were permitting them, they wouldn't be coming along and telling MODL that they had to put in a bylaw. But they don't. They just, they're hands off. So, you know, so everybody is passing the buck a little bit, but of everybody, we're the ones who really should, because it's not actually in our jurisdiction.
Okay. Let's continue on with our various committee reports.
That motion did actually get voted on, right?
Yep, it did.
Mhm.
Number 8.1, Climate and Environment Committee, you have the report in your material. Don't think there are any motions in there, so if you have a question. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Next one is Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program monthly report. No questions there? Community Logo Development Steering Team minutes.
And we have a motion in there.
Suzanne Lois Croft is not here, but
I
you're,
will make that motion as the other member on that committee.
okay,
I'll move that the council approach MBTCC to permanently discontinue the use of their current logo, that it might be exclusively used by the town.
do we have a seconder for that?
Well,
Deputy
Oh.
Mayor seconds it?
I'll second and have a question you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Is it possible, Councillor, now to get sort of an overview of why this motion is coming to council?
Sure. A lot of the results of the survey liked that type of idea for the logo. And we have a member of the chamber on the logo committee who actually suggested that we do this, and he felt that the chamber would be willing to go along with it. Because we've always said that we couldn't use that because it was actually the chambers. And he suggested that maybe the chamber would be willing to give that logo up and get a new logo of their own. So that's why the committee felt that we would go along this route.
And they were confident that the chamber will not take that as hostile action?
The chamber member that was here felt that the chamber would be willing to accept that, so. That's all I know, that the member that was here, that's on the chamber, felt that it would be positively received.
Councillor Carver.
I understood that one aspect of the difficulty with the previous logo that the town was using, that did belong to the chamber, was that it was difficult to reproduce it technically. Technically, it was challenging. And
From an accessibility perspective, as well as resizing it for different applications.
Yeah, I think the CAO might have more information.
Yeah, I can comment on that because I'm also participating on the committee. So there was a lot of good discussion on that. And essentially what had happened was, we got the response from the survey, as Richard said. And then in light of that, everybody looked at about 80 submissions that we received from artists. It was a very affordable, quick process. And everybody felt that based on what we had heard from the public, the designs that were most similar to the chamber's logo were the ones that they were favoring. So then the conversation became, so can we, retreat that logo? Can we just basically do what we need to make it work in different situations? And Alexandra, who is on the committee, who's a logo design person, she does this kind of work. I guess you'd say more branding professional than a design professional. But anyway, she did a quick presentation for the group about how you could make changes but stay fairly close to the original concept. And everybody was convinced that the only challenge, therefore, in doing that would be permission to do it and not having any possible future conflicts with other users of the logo. So there still would be a step after, if the chamber presumably agreed to this, of having an artist do a bunch of different formulations of the logo with colors and different layouts. But it would still be very, very, very similar, very difficult to distinguish from the logo that has been used by the town at one point.
Except that it would be made so it could be used on whatever.
So, I think it's just a matter of, will be close enough at that point, if this is the direction we're going, that it will still be a challenge to not have a distinguishable logo, even if we can address everything else. So I think that was where they went with it. And I will say, Alex, she said she'd also recommend, as she did recommend to the committee, a wider process and all kinds of more options could be explored. But based on the consultation and the will of the people around the table, this is a way forward that reflects that consensus. So that's where we ended up.
Councillor Carver.
I'm going to raise an issue which I've raised before, and I don't think it's a very popular one. But I do have an ongoing concern about the idea of using the images of 3 Christian churches as the town logo. As we know, that there was some commentary when the caravan went across Canada with the logo featured on
Oh, yes.
the
Ms.
it was
Andrews.
the recruitment campaign to get people to move to here. And there were questions about what are you? Are you some kind of religious organization? So And it does depict three Christian churches, which I know are deeply embedded in the history of the town and represent the history of the town. And I'm having a hard time getting by the three Christian churches at a time when we're also emphasizing our inclusivity. And just recently we talked about why should we favor Sunday, in our discussions about the noise bylaw, when other religions have different days of observance. So I don't know if that issue has been discussed at the logo committee, but for me, it's something that is on my mind about that particular logo.
And we did have that discussion at council when we first started to talk about revisiting this whole process. And it was my understanding at the time that very specifically, we would not be looking to use the image of Christian churches in the town's logo for those very reasons you cited, Councillor Barrett.
But this is a different discussion. It's a new discussion, so.
I think, if I may just interject and preface it by saying you won't find anyone, I don't think, in town that's more anti-Christian than I am. But we have to remember that this is a streetscape, and it's an icon of the town. So if you go with a postcard of those three churches to Esquimalt or Victoria or Regina or wherever, it's recognizable by everybody. And that's the whole point. The fact that they're Christian churches, in fact, even the fact that they're churches is incidental, I think, to the imagery that everyone associates with Mahone Bay.
Regardless of what the reason is that people would choose to put that in the logo for the town. Yeah. That's that photograph that.
And when we went through the logo process before, that was one of the big objections to the whole thing. As much as the logo, it was the process that we followed. So now we're trying to follow the process of getting public input, and this is what the public wants.
That's what we got. So, I'm a little, if I may just do one more thing, I'm a little bit confused about this request though, in the sense that I don't really understand why we need to ask the chamber to stop using a logo that they've been using for years, just because we're using one that's essentially almost identical. I mean, so what?
So. I mean,
Right back to the very beginning.
Yeah, at risk of anyone on YouTube thinking that they're watching an old episode,
Well, I missed that episode.
we wanted to have a logo that was distinguishable. So if, for example, the chamber put out a notice about something, it would be obviously not ours.
Okay.
The logo committee did talk about asking them instead to ensure that on every use of their logo, the words Mahone Bay Tourism and Chamber of Commerce were present. And, we could kind of try that, but, we won't be able to promise that, because the whole point of ours is to formulate the logo in a variety of ways. And that's, very challenging. So, yeah, that was the reason.
But aren't they suggesting that the chamber is going to be asked to stop using
Yeah, that's what
their
I'm
own
saying.
logo?
Yeah, and that way, when we're using the very similar logo, no one will have any question that
That
it's
it's
our
the
logo.
town's.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Under ours will certainly still have the town of Mahone Bay on it. Or Mahone Bay.
Well, yeah, it'll be built into it.
Yeah, no, yes.
But the Mahone Bay Civic Marina has got a very similar logo.
Yeah, we'll still run the risk of confusion. I
Mhm.
mean, like even the dentist office here has a
Yeah.
similar logo.
Yep.
But that's, the committee is aware of that. I mean, that's, we talked about that from the beginning.
So, okay.
Weird.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I guess what I wanted to talk about has been wrapped up in some ways, but maybe I will need to move from Kelly's side when I come next to council, because he's anti-Christian and I'm Christian. We'll have to find a way to work that out. Just wanted to, I get in many ways say we've given this committee the mandate to come up with a logo. We committed to accepting what they bring to the table, whether it's churches or horses that will come to the table. So I think we're at a place where we need to accept what the community wants and get this process going, so that we're not at the end of our term talking about handing over another logo process to the next council.
What was your suggestion with the next council, Deputy Mayor?
Not to pass on a logo development process to the next council. I'd love for us to be able to conclude this in this time. So doing this would be helpful to just get it along. I'm not so sure about having to ask the chamber to relinquish their logo. I thought there might be a better way. I think what we talked about, potentially a community logo that can be used by anybody. So I don't know where and how we change that we can't allow that to happen. So
That defeats the intent of what
So we talked about a logo that the town could license for community purposes, but that is different from just like a free use logo. I mean, if the community wants to have a free use logo, that's a great fun concept, but the town would still need a logo that we could legally own. Yeah, and we already went down that route 2 years ago of trying to explain to people those are two different things, and obviously that didn't go over well, so.
And I don't think, Deputy Mayor, that we ever committed to the committee doing the logo, that whatever they recommended, we would accept. I think they were going to make 1 or 2 recommendations to council, and council would make the final choice.
And that is still their terms of reference. Their terms of reference is to make a recommendation to council.
Yeah. So it's,
Anyway, this is our recommendation.
And it's still on the floor, I think, right?
okay. Can you read the motion again, please?
Sure.
Clerk?
That council direct staff to approach the Mahone Bay Tourism and Chamber of Commerce to request that they permanently discontinue the use of their current logo, that it might be exclusively used by the town.
Who moved that? Anyone? You did. You moved it? And who seconded it? Deputy Mayor?
Deputy Mayor was the
No, I
second.
didn't.
No, that's the-
Okay,
So I'm still struggling with the idea of asking the chamber to stop using the logo that they've been using for at least maybe 15 years.
I think
I
we
say no,
should,
then
by the motion, we'll ask them, and if they say no,
yeah, we're back to.
then, that's right, then this stops there,
Fair enough.
huh? Okay? On the motion then? All in favor? Thank you. So we'll approach the Mahone Bay Tourism and Chamber of Commerce for that. Okay,
Yes, and I think they're meeting quite soon. I believe they're meeting next week.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get that on there.
so we'll get a note off to them and.
Yeah.
But I think I would expect that we would have a response in writing that says unequivocally, we will stop using this logo.
Yeah, we need an actual letter saying, we've
Yeah.
agreed as of this date or whatever.
Okay? Let's go to the Policy and Strategy Committee. And open it up here.
So, there isn't a motion, but I do have a question. What's the status of the noise bylaw draft now? When's it coming back to us?
So the hope had been to get it back to council at the meeting on the 29th. Now, we know that there will once again be a little bit of attendance issue and stuff at that meeting, and we have 3 business days between that meeting and the meeting on the 11th to prepare a package. So if we don't get it on the 29th, we'll get it on June 11th or July 11th. I know Joe was very insistent on wanting to see it in this month, and I know there's a challenge in terms of the window to approve. So that's why we're really shooting to get it in time. But I believe if we did look at the 11th and then we had the 2-week advertisement requirement, so we'd run into that problem if we do. So we'll really try to get it to the 29th.
And the next draft is going to include the concept of the decibel count.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Kelly, you and I better talk in the morning. Just realizing that I'm not even gonna be here for the next meeting. I'm gonna get back the day the package goes out, so.
And I've downloaded my decibel count app now.
Oh, yes, yeah, we're all gonna have to calibrate them around the
There we
table.
go, Okay, policy and strategy committee meeting, the agenda for the next meeting is the reserves, draft reserves policy and potential amendment of the grants to organizations policy.
And this would be without any drafts, just a conversation.
Yes, yeah.
So I have a question, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Well, is there anything we can do, CAO, to make sure that it comes on the 29th? Maybe asking something be shifted from something that we're anticipating at the end of the month so that you're able to focus on the noise bylaw?
I think I just need to figure out what Kelly can, she's the one who put this together. We hadn't really talked about how quickly this would have to come together in light of my being away, but
Yeah.
we'll get it sorted. I've talked to Al, we're able to draw what we need to draw to get a draft together. We'll just have to prioritize it at our level, so.
Okay.
We'll work something out.
And noted that there's no meeting in June. Next meeting is the 24th of July.
We're public consultation that evening.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the minutes of the PAC. Anyone have any comments? We do have a motion in there.
The deputy mayor's the chair of that.
I'll wave back to him.
So I'd like to move that council directs staff to work with Upland to include appropriate language in draft MPS and land use bylaw concerning applications for development agreements received prior to the cutoff for new applications associated with the approval process for the draft documents.
Okay,
I'll second that.
thank you. Question on the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Well, that is the end of our agenda for tonight's meeting. How many people do we have still with us on the YouTube connection?
We have 9,
Okay, are there any questions?
no questions.
Maybe we'll just wait for a few seconds, for a minute or so to see if. Nothing? Okay, I think we'll call it a night. We're actually done by 9 o'clock.
Just because Councillor Feeney's not here.
Now you said that.
Yeah.
You might be
We'll
watching
watch
right
it.
now.
We'll watch it.
Well, thank you to the people at home who joined us for tonight's session. It's encouraging to us to have you follow along and to hopefully approach a counselor or me over the next couple of weeks and talk about things that are of a concern for you. We'll be back on the 29th of June. Will be our second meeting for that month. Anything else? Agenda's concluded. I do have to say goodnight to the people out in Langford, BC who are watching. Thank you very much. The meeting is done.
Good night, everybody.